Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making this Sunday and appearing on this very important webinar. Our intention today is to create a common understanding about the new reforms and the increased expectation from ASTRAC on this particular Tranche 1 entities. And we have only 15 days to prepare and be ready to take up the new obligations. So everyone know about me. And today we will be covering the historical importance of these reforms and the timeline of these new changes, and what are the new obligations for Tranche 1 entities during the Tranche 2 phase, and how Tranche 1 entities can be prepared for the new change, and governance and audit and assurance, transaction monitoring uplift, and the synchronization with technology, transaction monitoring, customer due diligence, and your compliance program are the key focus of these new changes. There are some comforting changes that are deferred until 2029, but they are not actually a date which they give you to go and do it at the last minute. But we will be talking about it. I don't want to go in detail, but those deferred obligations until 2029, and we will have some polls and questions as we go. Why these reforms? These were actually due from 2007, maximum by 2009, but due to so many reasons that these have been delayed until now. And ASTRAC is, Australia as a government is trying to align with FATF, which is the umbrella body, the worldwide regulator of countries. They have dynamically changed a lot, and they have brought some practical changes to their own guidances. So Australia is taking up and kicking start their efforts to keep up with FATF standards and their changing environment. Australia itself is identifying gaps in their mutual evaluation, identified gaps, and they are trying to fill those to meet their international obligations. And as we know, the very purpose of Anti-Money Laundering and Counterterrorism Act and the broader financial crime prevention measures are to bring fairness to the economy and strengthening the financial system integrity rather than leaving loopholes for fraudsters and money launderers and criminals to take advantage of the system. And this is supposed to, fingers crossed, improve customer protection, integrity across the verticals of different financial reporting entities, and reduce debanking. Let us see whether it really does. Modernizing the anti-money laundering and counterterrorism framework to give way to the digital economy, and also because there is no business nowadays which are running off the computer and digital systems. Therefore, they would also like to see that the framework is fit and aligned with the new and emerging technology. So there are key milestones in this which are past and emerging, and which are also coming. The 31st March and 31st July are the two major milestones, which brings the enhanced obligations to the existing reporting entities. And 31st July 26 is bringing those registration and commencement of new obligations for the Tranche 2 entities. So these are the two majorly important dates, whereas those 24 to 25 were the period during which the consultation finished in 2024 early on, and 2024 December, the law was passed, the AML-CTF Amendment Act 2024 was passed. And on 28th August 2025, ASTRAC released its new rules incorporating the new changes coming from the 24 legislation, and that is going to kickstart in operation from 31st March 2026. So we have the legislation and the ASTRAC interpretative rules. Both are binding and they will be enforced from 31st March 2026. We have done so many webinars. We have updated to our members and other reporting entities about new changes, ASTRAC guidances, and a particular topic of interest, etc. But this particular webinar is so important. I'm trying to refresh the memory and remind our members of their new obligations, which are really, really serious. Serious in the sense, those things which ASTRAC had been tolerating as that this is a period where people are learning and we have some excuse for what we have not done. From today, we will take it on also. But these are kind of, and I would hate to say this word, it's a life and death matter. They are bringing a lot of enhancement. We will be talking about it while we talk about particularly the transaction monitoring, because they tend to now even take up enforcement action against aligning rules in a very tighter manner. They have already commenced this. So that is the kind of seriousness. It has not come to a particular reporting entity, does not mean that you can sleep on it. I really want you to take this very seriously. Take notes and seek guidance if you really need some, okay? Thinking that you are doing the right thing is not anymore an excuse. Please understand that this is a time very serious, and as we all know, ASTRAC is going through a country-based mutual evaluation by end of this year, and they have to show some statistics of how they have penalized or enforced on reporting entities. So this is a very critical phase for every one of us, including ASTRAC. We are all being challenged. We have to pass through this situation. But sleeping and thinking that we are doing the right thing and therefore it's all fine is not anymore. And I'm using this word particularly because we know about some of our members, and it is our obligations to tap on your shoulder and make you understand the broader and the enhanced responsibility. Some of our friends have received very serious notifications, and your annual reports, which you may have already submitted or you will be preparing to submit before 31st March 2026, will be a key element of how they can come back and ask questions under delegated authority like 75N. Therefore, please be very cautious. I'm not threatening, I'm not intimidating. It is the fact. Please wake up and be serious with what we are talking about. You don't need to believe me. Go to ASTRAC website. ASTRAC has been very generous in publishing so many guidelines and interpretative notes on so many provisions. The main being the continuing customer due diligence, sanction screening and PEP screening, tightening the transaction monitoring rules and aligning the rules with your compliance program, the AML core requirement, and enhancing your risk assessment in detail, and having a methodology and documenting how you do your risk assessment. And this is going to be a huge work. And I'm sure almost 100% of all our members will be going back and looking at their risk assessment and enhancing their compliance program. And you must have a completely enhanced and updated compliance program by 31st March, because we know that we were not up to that standard, and we have to make new changes to this. By the end of this session, you will be. This is how I used to, when I attend conferences or seminars on AML, I will always go back to my workplace and say, these are all what I learned new today, and these are all changes I have to do. Therefore, you keep that an action plan and take it to your environment and complete that. So these are the milestones. 2029 has some comforting timeline for us to complete, but please don't take it as the milestone which is pushed by Astrac, but they are only tolerant. But for that, you have to have a action plan. For example, if Astrac comes and visits you under the newly acquired rights, and if they find out that you could have easily done those obligations and you are intentionally delaying until 2029, that may not be an acceptable deferral. Okay, so if it is hard, you are a very large organization, you need to recruit 10 people to do this, you have to develop a very huge software, therefore you need to take this timeline until 2029. That in that case, you need to show that you have a budget, you have a plan, and you have logistically prepared for your contract, and you can show everything. So my suggestion is not to take that 2029 pathway if you can actually put forth some plan and complete these within the next 3 months. So we will be also looking at that plan B and C in the coming slides. I'm also asking you, please, as you go, if you have any questions relating to your organization, you don't need to really put your organization name or your own names. You can put in the chat box your questions. Maybe we can take those at the end so that you don't forget those questions which you intended to ask. We may be also having a discussion, open floor discussion at the end of this session, because we are not running on a timed session today, so we can be slow. We can ask those questions. We can be generous to ourselves that it becomes a very useful session for all of us. So what we must be ready with by 31st March 2026. So the 31st March is the kicking start date of the Tranche 2 enhanced obligations for Tranche 1 entities. And from this day, Astrac will be open for all the reporting entities under AML CTF Act Tranche 1 to submit an updated Astrac business profile form with updated details. Very importantly, your updated AML code. So this is basically an activity, a task, which legally asks you to mention your AML co name for them to conduct a due diligence on. They may come back under their 75 yen requirement after this date. Once you have submitted that, you have time until I think June 2026. I will confirm as we go. I have taken a note of that date. That's the end date for you to submit that form. So the form will be open from 31st March 2026, and you have to submit this before 30th June 2026. So you have 3 months to submit that form with your new AML co or old AML co name on it. At this juncture, I will launch, we will launch the poll later. So the updated AML CTF program, we don't have to have a part A and part B, but it is not anymore a requirement. So we will be looking into what needs to be in your updated AML CTF program later, but this we are talking about the timeline. So your reporting entity need to be ready with an updated AML CTF program, whether or not you have a part A and B. It's not anymore a mandatory requirement. And that date starts from that day until 30th June 2026. You also should have a revised KYC and continued customer due diligence procedures. In saying about revised KYC, you remember we used to have a safe harbor. We need to do ID verification, sanctions and PEP screening, and also make sure that they are free from any adverse media thing. But the new thing is, the foundation of the new thing, let me update, the regulator thinks that, okay, you do all these, and then you need to consider that your platform should not be a ground or a channel helping or enhancing criminal activity. So it's not a place where harm is encouraged. That is the foundation to it. And keeping that as a foundation, the new requirement is that you need to keep the risk assessment on each one of your customer up to date. Please listen carefully. The risk may be coming from the inherited factors of who they are, whether they are disclosing all about them and how they disclosed about their future transactions with you and how you classified them through scores to be low, medium, or high risk customers. And then during your watchful eyes under the TMP, the transaction monitoring program, you have also noted that there is an elevated risk which is dynamically brought back and updated into the profile, which means your continuing customer due diligence need to be up to date all the time. So you may now decide based on your own product, your own platform, and how frequently the customers are going to come back. You may decide that we will be conducting re-KYC on customers when they come back to us for a new transaction, which may be the case for most of our members because some customers may not come once in a year, but you don't need to spend money on doing their KYC every week. So if you take a decision that we will be doing it every year, you need to be able to link your risk without any gap. So you need to reason why you have taken that stand of re-KYC in every 1 year, which may be too difficult to substantiate in a remittance provision environment because you need to prove that this customer or, you may also choose that we have uploaded all our customer data into a silo, which is in the watchful eyes of our data provider. And they are letting us know through an email that when there is a slight change in the risk profile of any customer, that may be a very acceptable situation. I don't know whether everyone understands what I'm saying, that your customer, know your customer details, and your customer due diligence procedures need to be dynamically matching the risk customers are posing. And you need to really bring back and link why you took that frequency. You need to reason it so that it can be acceptable to the regulator or an external auditor or even a stakeholder like a bank. Because when you receive a bank questionnaire again, they will be asking this question: how frequently are you doing your customer know your customer re-KYC and others due diligence activity? Therefore, it is not anymore once you know your customer, you know them forever. It has to be a dynamic process, and you need to assign risk criteria, risk score to each of your customer, and that needs to be completely justifiable. Please note that. So you need to, I think I'm going so deep before I think we will be seeing them as separate slides. So enhanced beneficial ownership verification. This has been there as an obligation before, but now that you need to do this for every institution you deal with, even as a channel partner, and supplier, or if you have any institution which you are relying on to complete your obligations, your own directors, your own AML co, you need to have beneficial ownership verification. If you are not, even though you are not dealing with companies and other non-individual customers, you need to have the beneficial ownership procedures and the data data supply, so that you can fulfill this obligation. Revised PEP definitions and the screening requirement, strengthened ongoing customer due diligence that I think we have seen when we saw this second block. Revised transaction monitoring rules, that also we have spoken as an introduction, but we will be looking into that in detail. Updated suspicious matter reporting triggers and governance is one area where the new and enhanced legislation and rules are requiring those who are the owners or the board, if you have a senior management which is managing your organization, they need to be trained with the new requirements, and they need to be briefed, and they need to be involved in terms of providing budget for your AML CTF obligations, as well as the AML co and the board and the governance body need to be in information synchronization anyway. So these need to be in place by 31st March 26. So what is changing in terms of beneficial ownership? FATF requirement, FATF guidance recommendation 24 is asking countries and reporting entities under the regulatory framework need to have beneficial ownership transparency all the time. So reporting entities now should have either built-in APIs, collect beneficial ownership data, analyze and frame the flow of how the ownership is flowing into. And if you don't have a systematic capability to capture this, you need to have at least a template to receive and verify and record the beneficial owner data. And also, you need to be capable or build your capacity to capture or ask when there is a change in ownership. So that means you need to also monitor. Maybe a good idea is to build an API with ASIC to notify you when there is a new change in beneficial ownership of an entity in that company. So it is not just collecting once, it is also updating and monitor any change which can happen in the beneficial ownership of any company. So we are talking about those who have already held customer due diligence and risk scores, systematic risk scores, or framing a risk score based on the information collection, for example, age. Can you unmute all? But we are talking about those who already have risk classification, risk score, and risk assignment to each factor of the KYC information collected. Now they are asking us to have more granular risk assessments. For example, you may have added what countries this particular entity is expected to remit monies in a remittance environment. A particular country may present more risk. So as they expand their service to or from any jurisdiction, I'm just taking one example. It doesn't mean only country risk. So you remember we have broader risks of technology, country, people with different age group, people with different occupations, income capacities. Some occupations like retiree or pensioner or students may present higher risks. And that way, when you also based on transaction monitoring rules, if a particular customer is hit by those rules, you may decide that that they are a safe customer, but you will bring back that rule-based risk to customer risk classification and build broader scores so that you can meet with this new expectation. Mandatory verification for higher risk customers before onboarding, and then updated PEP screening definitions, strengthened source of funds wealth checks. In everything we do, we need to look into our compliance program, your systemic capacity, and also train your employees. In everything we are going to talk and what we have spoken already, these three things need to happen. One, go back to your compliance program and risk assessment and make sure that they touch those and talk about it. And then you also align your compliance program with your technology, your software or application or anything which you take as an aid to complete your transaction. That includes your channel, and then you provide training to your employees to make sure that they do understand why these changes are happening, and they need to learn to work with those changing systems and programs. If you have digital onboarding system, please make sure that they systematically align with your compliance program, and they do what you say and they speak what you do. So there may be your continuous monitoring expectations have changed in terms of customer onboarding, transaction, beneficial ownership. So everywhere you need to be alert and monitoring everything happening around within your customer client base, your channel, your software, your beneficial ownership. So it is not just that you have done and you have dusted with it. You need to make sure that you have a continuous responsibility to monitor that you play within a very safe environment. There may be some triggers which will require immediate review. When it comes to review, before I forget, if you are talking about an implementation plan, the first thing you will do is to have a gap analysis, and that gap analysis must be conducted by someone. You need to have the gap analysis before you plan your new and enhanced systemic and programming capacity. So if you think that you have conducted a review in the past, very recent past, you have an exemption as to when you will be obligated to do your next review. But if you have a new risk assessment and compliance program, it is suggested that you review this with an independent internal or external person before you put that to work, because that is what is anticipated now. And the 3-year risk review, external review, you must do at a minimum every 3 years. But if your risk is higher, you may be asked to do this earlier. So if you have, for example, if you are an advisor, you get 1 or 2 clients in a year, you may take that 3 years time frame. Otherwise, you will have to work on your risk level and pick your AML/CTF external review. And your ongoing due diligence must be integrated with transaction monitoring alerts. You remember what I told you earlier? We have been risk rating the customers based on the KYC data. Now you also have to integrate the transaction monitoring data to integrate with customer data to build your customer score and their profile. This is one area I want everyone to focus on, because I'm also wearing another hat as an auditor. From what I have seen, a lot of enhancement is required. The expectations have changed and they are skyrocketing. There were instances where people had been sent notices for leaving one rule undone. So we need to really make sure that what is seen in the risk assessment, it's a scientific process. The risk assessment gives you a risk score of 50. Your KYC and customer due diligence and ongoing customer due diligence has reduced it to 20. And that 20 is a risk which is ongoing. Still, it's not fully mitigated. So that 20 score need to be mitigated through transaction monitoring. Now, as an auditor, I have to look into whether or not your the alert rules built into your system and aligned with your compliance program is adequately curing the 20 residual risk, the 20 score of residual risk. Again, you are coming back to say how you justify the 5 rules you hold in your transaction monitoring. Believe me, we have been struggling to manage those 5 rules, and my job is to obtain sample data and make sure that the rules mentioned in your compliance program are being practically used in those sample data. And we have struggled proving that. Now, my job is also expanded to make sure that you had assessed your risk to the full extent and then mitigated through KYC and ongoing KYC due diligence processes, and then whether or not your transaction monitoring rules and alerts are adequate to cover the residual risk. That means we have a lot to work on to build from scratch. We have already fallen short of this particular transaction monitoring program. People say we are fully prepared. There are we do fully automated transaction monitoring. Some people say that we do this through Excel. Some people say no, we just capture these as they come and then we document the process. Some even don't have any process at all. But this has surpassed all those practical point of view and requires you to scientifically prove that your transaction monitoring rules are adequate and it is practically efficient to handle the risk. So there is a huge amount of time and effort we need to put in order to make sure that our transaction monitoring is lifted up. So one, that we need to make sure that our rules are adequate. Then when you put those rules, we need to have testings to conduct through sending false transactions, which will be fully matched to see whether they are capturing, and then document each and every instance of the risk due diligence, the enhanced due diligence we conduct, and the lesson we learned back must be brought back to align with new rule. And you need to also do so documentation is very, very important. If you are having a system which does your transaction monitoring, some people, they demonstrated that they do this in a preventive manner. They don't let the transaction go without really satisfying that it is a suspicious transaction. You may do so, but you need to have auditable trial and documentation of what you have done, why you felt that was a safe transaction, or why you felt that was a suspicious transaction. All those decision matrix need to be documented. Documentation is the key now, okay? If I come as an auditor now, I need to make sure that you hold all these and I am satisfied with those documentation. And when you put a rule to work in your transaction monitoring, calibration includes independent validation of that rule. So now they are talking about SMR entities who say that we don't have any SMR at all. Some say that we have only few. Why should I report my own customer who is good to me? I know he is good. all those arguments, now they say when you need to have an expanded SMR trigger, and you need to clarify that the suspicion formation is documented and the SMR decisions are based on rules, not arbitrary. Okay, and the rationale and justification need to be documented, and why you think that it is not a suspicious uh, person or transaction. Sometimes we do think that, all our customers are known to us. How can I suspect? And all those things, these are known to the regulator, but they say now you don't need to. If you think that a suspicious matter is not suspicious, and you have the power to decide that it is not suspicious, you should have documentation and evidences to prove that. Otherwise, if you think that it is beyond your decision and your capability to decide that it is fully clarified to be safe, then you need to report this. As not all the suspicious matter reports submitted had been prosecuted, and people are ending up being in jail. Okay, so if you put an alert system and you have an Excel, at least as a minimum Excel based query system, it is not anymore an acceptable point to say that we have a watchful eye, therefore we only report what we think it is suspicious. You need to have a systematic rule-based transaction monitoring program which actually triggers SMR, and through a process you may say that it is safe, but you need to have clear documentation to make sure and to prove to an auditor or a regulatory personnel who visits you to make sure that it is safe, and you held that. The test here is how a full adult person with common sense will make that decision. You don't need to be an expert, but you need to make that decision as a full-blown 18 plus person who can make that. Governance and board oversight, we spoke about it. We need to, if your board and your senior management is not knowing about AML CTF Act and the new and enhanced requirements, it is the job of the AML code to go and make sure that the board and the senior management is aware of these requirements and they are updated periodically. The rule says that they need to be updated at least once in a year, and when the external review happens, the report needs to be discussed. The report and the recommendations needs to be reported to their board, and the board needs to make sure that a remediation happens within reasonable time, and they need to allocate budget for the remediation if it requires a monetary budget. So annual AML CTF attestation is that. I said it is the at least once in a year. And your organization needs to have accountability, and the resources need to be mapped clearly. If your company is large and if it has a risk and audit committee, you need to report back to. If it is a board, you need to report back to. If it is not, and if it is one or two people, they need to have formal board meeting, and you need to hold resolution minutes of the meetings to make evidence that they have been reported on this particular, and you may need to produce extract of the minutes of the meeting to auditors or regulators. Therefore, you need to update your governance framework. Or if necessary, you need to also conduct board training. And talking about training, I think our reporting entities need to take training as a very serious matter. You need to have training programs which are which forms part of your compliance program, and you need to document it. Even if they are outdated, you need to have versions, and you need to keep all those training materials for record keeping purposes. You need to also schedule meeting. You need to hold minutes of those training as to those who have attended, whether or not you have an evaluation as to how your trainings have been conducted. You are seeing this, we are seeing this word assurance for the first time. In an audit environment, a review, an audit is completely different from an assurance provision. An assurance is that someone who is certifying that there is no problem at all, or if there is problem, it has to be disclosed in the auditor's opinion. We call it as qualified audit. So now they are coming to an elevated requirement, which is independent review and assurance. The reform is now coming to make sure that the audits happening under 161 need to be more accountable, and there needs to be at least a biannual review for medium risk entities, mandatory annual independent review for high risk entities, and these audit need to be clearly scoped, and the auditor needs to disclose the methodology and expectation. We have, in our audit firm, we have actually now elevated our methodology. And we are also even coming up with recommendations plus remediation plan to assist with the entities commencement of remediation and resourcing it. So they need to have a reviewers early. Non-availability of a reviewer is not an excuse. In line with a New Zealand requirement, if let us say your AML program is saying a review every 2 years. Some people, let us commence audit by end of that year. For example, you conducted a review in 2023 June, and your actual review is due by 2025 June. The expectation now is that you need to commence this review. If you estimate that your review is going to take 3 months, you commence it by March so that you have a brand new review report ready to be presented to your board by June 30th. So it is not that they have noted this and they are blocking by saying that you need to make sure that your audit process need to be timed, need to be completed in time. Prepare documentation and evidence, address findings with action plans. So audit report or a review report is not a sleeping document. It needs to be. So next review we come, maybe we have in some instances, we go back in 3 months' time, even ask that entity within the same engagement what remediation you have commenced and completed, so that this can be an assurance rather than a review. So if you are using technology, I'm sure most of us use technology, then you need to make sure that your data quality and the lineage is integral to what is required. So you may not be going back and, where did I leave my cloud recording or backup? So you have to have clarity to where the data is and how they are maintained and the quality of the data, because by adding validation to inputs, you can actually maintain data quality. For example, if any of your frontline staff does a mistake in adding a date of birth or a name spelling mistake, especially when we use different language names, people have different spellings in their mind. For example, Masood is one name. I can say Masoud is used somewhere. Some people in Arabic, it is Masoud, but people when they say Masood or Moud, when you put these names differently in two different places, your data quality has already compromised. So if you put validations to most of your data points, data fields, then you can actually manage. This is one example. I'm saying your software developers may know better, but this is one area you need to, because these are all things we are talking about for first time. People have ready-made softwares, you can't control what they do. No way of excuse that you can't throw any of your accountability on anyone. You need to make sure your systems are properly aligned to your compliance program. and your data quality is managed, and if you have to integrate address validation from Australia Post, ASIC data integration from ASIC. Some people take ASIC API to manage their ABN number for clients. Then any data source which you need to API, and make sure that those data sources are updated. Getting from some source, whether they are credible or otherwise, is not an excuse. This responsibility is now actually spreading everywhere. You need to make sure your sources, your resources, your conduct, and your channel and the platform, everything is up to date. You have to monitor everything. That means you need to create a list of items you need to be in control of. And maybe it's a good suggested idea, because I have now created a checklist for what should be ready by 31st March. If any of you need, you can contact me. I can send you. But in a broader sense, you need to have checklist of things which this is very important. I go back and verify every week. These items, I go back and verify whether who is responsible for such verification. I'm sure this is going to draw up a lot of manpower or maybe technology to do all these, but there is no other way. Please don't keep assuming that you have excuses for this anymore. So these checklists need to span from your channel partnership, your technology, your source of data, your data management, your privacy, your case management, how people are seriously working, everything you need to capture, and you have quality control so that you can say that we are doing this job with integrity. And documentation, as we said, is very important. Keep documenting and document everything in a specific, organized way, so that you can, be it within your software environment or manual, please keep data documentation, everything in a clear way, legible way, so that even you document things, assume that you are not going to be there tomorrow and someone else is going to be reading your notes. And that is how I was taught when file notes documentations are maintained. So understand the implication and prepare documents and evidence, address findings with action plans. Technology and data. Conduct system gap analysis. If any one of you want me to give you a gap analysis, I can definitely help you with this. Prioritize high-risk processes and give priority in terms of resource allocation and budget allocation. Plan for staged implementation and have your implementation plan in hand with all the logistics and how you are going with your timeline, etc. If you want me to review your implementation plan, please take my help. I think we spoke about all these earlier. Conducting an enterprise-wide money laundering and terrorism financing and proliferation financing risk assessment, because the new law is actually MLTF and PF. Proliferation is that some of the nations are providing financial help, and us being an element of that part of that regimes supporting proliferation finance. Governance is one area where a lot of emphasis happens in this new regime. That means that the ownership, the board, and the senior management needs to be involved and be accountable for anything and everything. So the implementation roadmap, for an example here, so within your 0 to 3 months, calibrate your transaction monitoring alerts and rules. Gap analysis, draft updated AML-CTF program, update onboarding workflows. One key error I have noticed in many things is that people don't understand the version control of the AML-CTF compliance program and the risk assessment document. Please maintain it. This is in your interest, because when a reviewer comes and picks up a sample from a previous program date, effective date, let's say that you have a new implemented AML CTF program from 20th October 2025. If an auditor walks in and takes a sample period of June 2025 and expects you to be compliant according to the new program, you can actually cite your old program saying that the new program only came to effect on 20th October 25. Therefore, the new requirements will not be applied on the old sample data. So it is in your interest, and also it is mandatory and it's by law to keep all your AML CTF programs in line with your record keeping requirements. And it is also a good idea, and it is essential for you to maintain the version control in your initial pages. Update onboarding workflows to make sure that you have this risk scoring incorporated into your onboarding requirements, and also calibrate your transaction monitoring rules and alerts, and make sure that it is in line with your residual risk management and the new learnings you brought from changing legislation, your enhanced due diligence, and any new learnings when you do your investigations. Train your staff. Make sure that you have enough material to train your board, senior management, all the three lines of defense, including your customer-facing frontline staff. Implement system changes. And then phase 2, 3 months to 9 months, implement system changes. Sorry, it should be this way. And then phase 3 is independent review, board attestation, and final adjustments to make sure that we live up to the enhanced requirements. So what can go wrong in us trying to comply with the new requirements? Over reliance on legacy systems. So thinking, as we said earlier, thinking that we have everything in line. My software is, my application is updated from Dubai. I don't have anything to do with that. And then inadequate board engagement. The board thinks that my staff is doing everything. I am paying someone that who is taking care of everything. And then the lack of documentation and evidence for decision making. Collecting a particular bank statement or a pay slip does not really give you the comfort of collecting a source of wealth or source of, very recently I had seen one instance where a currency exchange says that we will not be asking any document until the customer exchanges $20,000 and 50 transactions. It's not justified. Okay, you need to really take the risk of money laundering happening through you, and you need to really make sure that your thresholds, your collection of documentary evidences are in line with your residual risk, and they really are making sense. So you need to really write a lot of notes as to why you think that document really kills your suspicion. And you may also have problem with your poorly calibrated transaction monitoring rules. You may have good rules, but if your system is not resulting in one or two matching transactions, you need to really go back and check those calibration of your rules and make sure that they are up to date. And it's a good idea to document your testing instances also. And who can change those rules and thresholds? So you need to, if you leave all the rules and the thresholds to be able to be changed at frontline staff level, then it is not a real good control. As we spoke earlier, there are rules which can be dragged up to 2029, but don't take these as an excuse and sleep until 2029, because you are expected to have implementation plan and resource allocation and action plans to prove that you are on it. For example, full beneficial ownership registry integration, advanced, like let us say you have an Excel model, you have to invest $100 $100,000 to come up with a fully integrated AI based transaction monitoring model, then you can have a plan and allocate resources. And maybe, for example, you can be having conversations with an AI provider, developer who can help you on this. And that way you have time until this, but you need to really prove you need that much time. The comprehensive digital identity verification alignment, full automation of ongoing CDD, cross-border information sharing protocols, because you need to also align with information security and privacy. Therefore, you may be taking time to do this. Enhanced data lineage and audit trail requirements, full alignment with FATF. So next time when I come for an audit, if I have not found all these, and I must have satisfied myself with that you people are really working and there is a real work in progress on these matters if you are not fully complying with these requirements. What should be in your action plan? A minimum expectation, a gap analysis conducted independently, and based on that gap analysis, you need to have a prioritized roadmap. You may not be able to prioritize everything. And then you need to have a budget allocation, technology uplift plan, vendor engagement strategy, governance, and oversight structure. This is one area you need to have an oversight plan and, oversight strategy, compliance policy and program if you are a network provider, because the responsibility of governance and governance of AML CTF program comes under you. You may ask your affiliates to do certain things, but overall responsibility lies with you. Therefore, you need to have tightened and very comprehensive oversight plan for your AML CTF management of your affiliates. Finally, start early. It's already too late. We have been waiting for the annual reports to go, and that's why this has been dragged this long to this webinar to be conducted. But in all cases, we have been sending notifications. We have attended from ARCPA, we have attended meetings with ASTRAC. We have also been briefed about these. I'm sure everyone has been receiving notification of guidances from ASTRAC. I received so many calls from reporting entities, clients to clarify those guidance materials, which we have done. So please prepare a plan, prioritize your high-risk areas, engage technology and review partners, maintain strong board engagement, and document everything. From today, prepare a compliance diary, document everything what you think. Because most of our clients, most of our members, they just think that they are doing transaction monitoring, what they think that they are doing. Even internal conversations can be documented, because you remember, there are many learning criteria arising out of our annual reporting. For example, have we had how you have been communicating within your organization as to what suspicious matters have been noticed. Unless otherwise you maintain a documentary trial, the only way to prove is to have verbal conversations. But that is not going to be acceptable for the next complaints reporting period. There is also, do you have a lightened KYC for victims of domestic violence and Aboriginal people, etc.? Do we have a plan? We have been saying no. Many of our reporting entities have been saying no to this, but we must start thinking about it now. Have you had a documentary flow of your risk assessment? We have been saying no. Now we must have one. So go back to your annual complaints report submitted last year or this year and learn what you have been missing on those reporting, and you need to also include those in how you document in your compliance program and risk assessment and the other due diligence documentations internally maintained. There are many people who lack privacy policy, data security policy, data integrity policy, information management, etc. Please go back and enhance all your policies and procedure. Now we will go as a priority to our, okay, as we go through the questions, I have some. Can you reassign the host to me so that I can display the polls? Sumi?
I'm looking how I can, because I have not using this since I'm using something else.
Let me reclaim. I think I can reclaim.
Yeah, you can reclaim because I can't see
I
that
did.
option, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
My God, I created a few polls, but they are not showing here. Okay, anyway, leave that. Let's go to the Harald has asked a few questions. Astrac re-registration. Can you discuss this? Yes. Astrac, it's not re-registration, actually re-submission of your Astrac business profile. I think we slightly touched this. This obligation commences. Actually, they are opening this re-registration form. It's not again re-registration. It is resubmission of your Astrac business profile form with updated AML name. Particularly, they are just focusing on this. This obligation commences on 31st March 2026. You may do this on the same date, or you can do this up to 30th June, but that is the window. 30th June, if you miss, then you are actually breaching. Why they are asking this? Because this is going to be in the new platform. Plus, they will analyze all these new AML code. They may come back and ask what qualification they do possess and what experience they hold, whether they are fit and proper, how fit and proper person will be defined, etc., will come in that time window. And these are for not for tranche 2 entities. This is only for tranche 1 entities because I think they are going for a new database which will be helping them to analyze these regulator-based risk flags and come back with more questions under 75N, etc. And you may be seeing that they visit you in the newly acquired information seeking and the newly acquired privileges. Next question is around, are not ready, but you can have a, but no, I think we clearly distinguished in our slides that you are not allowed to be excused under all the obligations to be deferred until 2029. There are obligations clearly kicking start by 31st March. Please be aware of those. You are only required, you can avail this deferred date only if you have an implementation plan. If Astrac visits you earlier than this 2029, you must have a plan of action and implementation plan, and you can only seek those excuses for certain obligations, not all of them. Sumit has asked.
No, I have not asked. I just added the comments of the questions which Mr. Harold posted. Yeah, so that was my just comment on that.
Yeah. See, this re-KYC, Harold, it comes when we do the when the new and changed. It was there also in the continuous ongoing due diligence of your customers. But this is even more obligated under the new regime. And they are asking about if you have a registered customer base who are continuing to be your customers, how you manage their risk. This re-KYC basically is expanded not just to the indicator, the identity points of the data points of name, date of birth, address, occupation, sanction screening, PEP screening, and ID verification, etc. They are also asking reporting entities to to make sure that they classify this information and they have a clear roadmap to make sure that these information are risk scored and they arrive at these customers in a scientific way, what kind of risk they still pose after onboarding. And okay, they disclose that they have plans to do this much business with us. Their thresholds are defined in the profile. We know as banks ask, what's your next year plan? We may be asking, what's your next plan? How many beneficiaries you will be onboarding? What's your salary? What's your disposable income for remittance? All those things you can actually bring it in your risk assessment. And then if anything changes in their behavior, or maybe they are reporting that I changed an occupation, my income capacity has reduced, I lost my job, or my income capacity increased. Those dynamic data should also be brought under the KYC so that they can be dynamically managed. No, this not just applies to individuals. This also applies to corporations, etc., because they are all legal persons. Beneficial owners, yes, beneficial owners. When it comes to you dealing with channel partners, service providers, clients, even if you are not dealing with individuals, you need to have those plans and data capturing capability or a template of forms to have the UBO information captured and analyzed. Yeah, thank you for bringing crowns. Yeah. Is there any other questions? Any hand raising? Can you open the floor, Russ? You can unmute if you want to ask a question. Otherwise, we will close this meeting today. And you may also, we are available to clarify, and we can also give advices. Some of them we can do for free, unless otherwise it takes a lot of time from us. Please make use of our availability. We are ready to help, but you may have to wait a little bit because we already have a queue of things. If you send your compliance programs, we can also evaluate and let you know where you are falling short of. If you want us to be hired as your gap analysis analysts, we can also do that.
Ram?
Yes.
Sorry, I just had one question in regards to compliance officer.
Yeah.
What's the new requirement? Like, do they need to have a certain qualification or, if you've got like, let's say 10 years of experience, but you don't have like a diploma, does that matter?
See, now we will be moving towards that, but to start with, if you have 5 years of experience in managing a business and you never had a problem, those are all things you can list. You may be preparing a submission for yourself and keep it ready that we have been doing. We have never had an issue with ASTRAC. We were never a subject of enforcement. We have managed it all well. We can read and make sure that the ASTRAC regulatory guidances are implemented and taken into consideration. And we have prepared myself training program to my staff, and we do this. Those are all demonstrated capabilities.
But there's no like required qualifications.
Correct. Yeah. And then what is newly sticking to this is the fit and proper. You should not be a prosecuted criminal. You should not be a undischarged bankrupt. These are all requirements which are coming into, and that is part of the fit and proper, which you have to go through. There is no excuse. But a little bit of gray area is the qualification and experience, which we can actually substantiate. Someone who doesn't read English and not able to understand a piece of guidance and the rules may not call themselves as qualified to be an AML co, unfortunately.
Okay, that makes sense. And also, obviously, there's no mention of like bank accounts or anything like that, right? Because, there's a lot of requirements from us, but in order for us to be able to meet some of those.
But as I mentioned, they are talking about stopping, when they bring everyone up to this standard as of 30th June, they may go and say, hey, all our reporting entities are complying, but that is what they say. I don't know whether it is their focus, but they also say that their focus is reducing the bank.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Vivek. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me for the last 1.5 hours. We will be going back and editing these. And if you need any help, please don't hesitate to call us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ram.
Thank you.